Exceptional Radio.
Tornado watch remains in effect till 11 p.m. I always say that. And then I wait and I watch and I don't see the tornado. I think I'm lucky, actually, if that's the case.
Well, because the warning is the one where the...
Yeah, that's the one where it's actually been cited, and the watch means that the conditions are
favorable. The language is dumb.
Favorable conditions for a tornado. Hey guys, let's get this party started. There's favorable conditions for a tornado.
Right, a tornado watch makes it sound like it's a party. It's a watch party.
Or it's like a dive watch. You know, it's able to withstand high winds and high impacts. I really think I've been watching a lot of I've been getting weather updates, and they're all kind of anxiety inducing, and then nothing happens. Then I go and look at Weather Max, and that guy is so sensational. He's like
really bad about it.
He's the fucking game show host of weather reporting. I mean, I'm excited when there's good weather, but he's excited about all weather, and I guess that's cool. He's passionate, but man, it seems to blow everything out of proportion.
Have you seen What We Do with the Shadows?
Yes.
Him and Ryan Hall remind me of Colin Robinson when they were like reporting on something that's getting, a potentially dangerous situation. It's like they're hiding their excitement, but it like seeps through sometimes. Or like, guys, this is gonna be a real bad one. I need you to go get in your shelters and bundle up, and keep watching us. We're gonna keep you safe. And the way they do hype it up, and then it gets to the point where, because they hype it up so much, the people who are watching, if they then take measures to prepare and nothing happens, then they turn on the broadcasters, to the point that one today was like, I think it was Reed Timmer's broadcast. They were saying, like, if the people in the chat start saying it's not a big deal, just boot them. Just immediately boot them. We need people to take this seriously, and we need people to not play it down. Ugh. And I'm like, that's your fault, though. It's their fault that people aren't taking it seriously, because every time there's these, favorable conditions, they're like, oh, we're going to go storm chasing. And just like Bigfoot, a lot of the times they're just in the car riding around, fucking not finding anything. And so
I want to see their tax returns. I want to make sure they're not some kind of like plant for the, emergency food bucket industry. Every time there's a big storm. Every time there's a storm, and I made the mistake of looking at that stuff one time on Amazon, and every time there's a storm, I get suggestions for one of the survival food buckets. Here's a week worth of breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 4 people for $180.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
Nutritionally balanced. Some of them are more affordable. Some of them are wicked expensive. There's some really fancy ones out there for $500 bucket for 4 days for 4 people. And that's like the finest backpacking food, basically. But it's got everything, water, your proteins, your carbs, sugars.
Meanwhile, you could get like 20 cans of tuna and a few boxes of fucking crackers and be set.
And like
if
several
it was
cases
really
of
that
water.
big of a deal.
Yeah, man. It never ceases to amaze me. Can't make a run on the eggs and bread and milk, so they got to go make a run on survival food buckets.
Starting to think that making the basic necessities part of this system of profitability was not a good idea. Because then it makes people not able to rationally approach those things when they get stressed out. And it's like, I feel like I'm going to die, so I'm just going to buy $1,000 worth of fucking eggs.
So we need to figure out a system that makes all of the things that people make runs on unnecessary. So eggs, bread, right. Milk, money, healthcare, transportation.
Well, price controls work. It's like I've seen them in action in that if you go to Turkey, bread is like always under a certain amount because the government controls the price of bread. And it's like if you try to oversell and upsell the bread and be like, oh, the government says I can only charge 1.5 lira, I'm gonna charge 3, you're gonna fucking get your shit taken away. Like if they might come and fine you the first time, and if you do it again, it's like, no, you're not gonna be able to keep operating if you like think that you can just charge what you want because people need bread. But it's not like that for, soda or everything. It's like there's certain necessities that they do that for, where you would, the way our economy operates, you would think that type of price control isn't possible because they make everything seem so difficult here.
I saw this thing about a Norwegian, I think he was Norwegian, maybe he was Finnish, soccer player, and he was the MVP, and his award was like 3 dozen eggs. Oh man, that like simultaneously makes me, it's like, good job, my dude, kick ass. But it also makes me realize that soccer is not as profitable of athletics industry.
Well, not in America.
Not in America.
Some of the most wealthy sports players on the planet are soccer players. Yeah. It's just they fucking Ronaldo could walk down the street in a lot of American cities and nobody would know who he is, but he couldn't fucking step out of a car in most other places on the planet.
Yeah.
Or Messi. It's funny how much Americans have made this specific culture about disliking something that the rest of the world likes, and then in the process to try to reclaim the name football for a game that's played with hands.
They kick it sometimes, occasionally. I mean, I've seen them punt the thing and do the field goal and the kickoff.
Right.
That's like 3 times, at least a minimum of three operations with the foot.
Well, it's at most roughly like 10% of gameplay in a football game, in an American football game. But at the least it can be, maybe 1% of what's happening, where it's like, yeah, even the time that they use the feet, they're still using the hands first. Like you're never going to kick a ball.
That's right.
Without using your feet, without using your hands.
It would be possible for a football game to commence with only 2 kickoffs and no punts and no field goals. It is, theoretically possible. Yeah, theoretically possible for that to happen. It's highly unlikely.
I mean, unless you're playing the Lions. Because that's why they were pissing teams off. They were going for fucking 2-point conversions on damn near every touchdown and running up the score. And they were like pissing off teams at the beginning of the season because you're in general, you're not supposed to do that just out of whatever. If you're that much better than a team at the professional level, they just generally don't do that. But once the Lions started doing it at the beginning of the seasons and not letting up, then other teams started trying to do it too. So now you're seeing teams even kicking fewer field goals after touchdowns. So it's like there's even less foot action in the NFL anymore.
You know, I wonder if there's like a culture of not kicking emerging.
Yeah, there is. And that's what I mean. It happened because the Lions started that shit, and so that's
yeah,
where.
but like I mean, like in like youth leagues that watch professional football and saw the Lions do it, and they're like,
oh yeah,
we don't need to kick the ball, guys. They whoop some ass, and all they did was run extra.
That's all. That's always how shit happens. It's like whatever happens at the college and professional level is what they all start trying to do at the high school and middle school level. They all just try to start emulating whether what don't matter what sport it is, whether it's basketball, football, baseball. That's what kids want to be. They're like, oh, I want to be Jeff Goff or whatever. I want to be the running back on the Lions, and in their heads, they're, obviously the coaches are calling the plays, but the kids are wanting to be like the professionals.
Yeah. But I think that comes with like any culture that has hero worship involved in at any level. I think that's actually why rock and roll like took a real big nosedive, is because eventually everyone realizes that watching people just inject their life away or put their life up their nose and burn out isn't actually that cool.
I think that's definitely part of it, but also I think organizations realize that they can't let individuals become bigger than the organization anymore.
Yeah.
So you got like, you once you have Michael Jackson going against Sony, I'm pretty sure Sony was like, we should never let anybody be able to, as an artist, be able to challenge us on this scale ever again. And I feel like Taylor Swift might be the only person who's challenged.
I think Taylor Swift is like the once in a generation variation.
I guess Kesha too. Kesha too.
Like the superstar artists who can command $1,000 like general admission tickets in Singapore. That's heavy. That's unparalleled. But yeah, no, I think you're right. Like, but I think that like she's like people like Taylor Swift, the Taylor Swifts or the Michael Jacksons of that industry. Those are so rare that they're gonna create their own micro industry anyways, and I think that comes down to whether or not the existing industry is able to, stay on board. And like in her case, she told Spotify what to do. Like nobody else does that shit. They told Joe Rogan what to do.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where they want to be in the position where they do exactly that, and they're the ones telling, dictating the terms and telling the artists what to do. But I'm not sure if there will ever be anyone ever again that's as big as it's like Taylor Swift may be the biggest artist that we ever see ever again.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there's Beyonce, like Beyonce's not dead or anything, but in the way that they put money into artists as investments, and the artists now are realizing that the artist was not getting the return on the investment and the company was getting the return. Like Drake, they've put so much money into him and they've gotten a lot of money back, but now he's pissed because people are realizing that he's not making as much money off of himself as UMG is making. So that's where the lawsuits really come from. Kendrick is like arbitrary in that, well, Kendrick is making more money off of his own work than Drake is. And so that's part of the issue as well. And so now that people know these things and now that they're public, it's becoming more admirable for people to own 100% of their work, if even if they only make 100,000 sales, than selling 1,000,000 copies and owning 1% or 3% or whatever, and not getting,
I think it is something like between 1% and 3%.
Yeah, it's not a lot. The especially when the way that these artists get signed is in um promotional deals where they start off small, and it's basically the bigger you get, the more binding the contract becomes. And further, they get um all their album sales held for a year. So if people start returning them, they have to pay the money back, and their advances come with interest. So there's all these things about, if you get an advance and then your sales don't match it, whatever you are in debt for comes with interest, and then that may bury you for the rest of your career. So that's where, do you remember Krayshawn?
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened to her as to why she's not around. So her career made her more in debt than she ever made money. Think about that. Think about that. That's fucking crazy. The idea that somebody can go into a career and leave in debt after working for multiple years in that field, not really doing anything wrong work wise, but because she signed a horrible contract, now she leaves doing all that work, owing them, I think it was like $700,000. We're not talking about a small amount of money either. It was like nearly $1,000,000. So if you're $700,000 in debt, where the fuck is she gonna get that from when she thought she was blowing up, supposedly about to be famous, making what she thought was gonna be the best money in her life? Like, if she hit that already, where the fuck is she gonna get the 700,000? No, basically she's an indentured servant, and that's what happens
Man,
to
that's just like the
90%.
nastiest fucking loan.
Yeah. But that's what happens to most artists. We just don't even see them all because so many of them are wrapped up in these contracts, and they don't make it big, that it's like they spend the rest of their lives in these indentured servitudes, never having even remotely made it to becoming a household name, not even close. I mean, and luckily, they're not giving out as many of these contracts anymore because it ends up just not being as lucrative.
Well, it's extra dangerous now. Like one false step, and if the internet sees it, then everyone knows what that was, and that, it could be career ending for some in some industries. And it seems like almost any industry that has any kind of public face, where anyone has to maintain a public face, the cameras are not our friends anymore. I guess they were always unflattering, but now they're really dangerous for some people. And I saw a video of some congressional representative making some spurious claims about Ukraine, and then there was an actual like a historian of extremist and far right ideology, and they just corrected them like on the spot. So some people can get away with saying things and not losing their career, but I guess politics is all about lying, anyways.
Yeah, politics
If
specifically.
if it was being honest, there's like a different name for that. Being honest. No, I
So
think it's also really complicated too, because so much of what I see from musicians is essentially self promotion. There's very little other than pre and or post production touches, like to give someone's video clip some continuity with whatever else it's being injected to, whatever series it's now a part of. Like a lot of that stuff, always looks very self produced, and not in a bad way. A lot of these bands have really good teams that they work with, but it's I don't think that I think that the I think everything has changed sufficiently that we're like past the point where the label is going to do this huge capital investment to do the marketing. They're only interested in people who can already market themselves and who already have their own production uh, system in place.
Well, and that's true, but um it's also why the exact reason as you're alluding to as to why most bands are just marketing machines and they're not good music is
Yeah,
because when the musician is tasked with being their own A&R and they have to make their own music videos and have to edit their own fucking sound and they have to be a jack of all trades. Eventually, music becomes roughly like 20% of what they're working on. And so in reality, they should be working on music 100% of the time, but because these fucking executives have come in and stripped the industry down, now you got musicians working on music 10%, 20% of the time, and the rest of the time they got to do literally everything else. And then they only get paid in a way that is commensurate to what it used to be and not as if they're now taking on all these tasks. It's like all of the jobs got cut out of the music industry, but the pay that those jobs were receiving didn't start going to the artists that were picking up the slack.
yeah,
And that same shit is happening in every fucking industry. I see it happening, like all these fucking investment banks are going in and buying up industries and doing this model where they come in and strip down every part of the work and try to make it the most bare fundamental operating relative to what it used to be, but then they don't redistribute the overhead profit that could make everybody get paid better. And so everybody that's still around gets paid the same, does 5 times as much work, and then the executives just sap the industry until it dies. And watching this happen to all these different industries around America, it's hitting tech in a way that like suddenly shit's not working as well. YouTube algorithm isn't working as well. Twitter fucking um feed isn't loading as well. Your what's trending right now, trending topics aren't working as well. So all these different things that we got used to have working are suddenly starting to break down in ways that the people in charge are pretending the breakdowns aren't happening to protect their stock values, but in the process they're just letting it run out until it breaks, until it's like there's this type of person who buys a car and drives it and never gets the fluids fixed. They never get the oil changed. They never check the tire pressure. They never change anything. And then suddenly the car dies and they're like, oh, I need a new car. And that's how it seems like these investment banks are operating the economy, which it completely tracks, but they're they're moving so fast that it's not giving these industries enough time to rebuild themselves before they come back around and try to exploit it again.
and we're watching this shit play out with our government right now. And it reminds me of the just reminds me of the whole private equity deal of selling themselves their own companies after valuing them and well gutting them so they look good and then selling them and then liquidating. Oh, this business isn't working. We're just going to liquidate.
I saw a local post office get gutted and put up for sale in that same manner. And I'm like, who do they think is gonna fucking buy it though?
Yeah.
Like, what did they think? Oh, this thing that's been a post office for the last fucking 50 years, whoever knows how long, this terrible commercial real estate that's on a road that is basically only industrial operations. Who did they think was gonna come fucking buy up this real estate when there's other perfect real estate in better areas on the same street? On the same fucking street, bro. Not even like because the street that it's on runs from downtown all the way basically to the next city. So you can either go closer to downtown or go further away and get a better price.
I know like, I know what was going on in their minds when they thought of this, that they came up with this idea. It's called magical thinking. They were just gonna say, we're gonna put it on the market, somebody will want it, look at it, it's slaps the wall and says, this baby's got plenty of years left in it.
I really think a lot of the people who believe in the free market religion have never actually tried to do something on the free market, and they hold these individuals in their minds as bastions of what they think represents the free market, which is why they need to use government resources to fight any sort of indication that their paradigm is not accurate.
Wait, using the government to fight the free market sounds exactly like socialism.
Exactly.
Sounds a lot like socialism.
Exactly. Yeah. Ironically, they get all socialist when the free market doesn't go their way. So that's why Tesla needs government protection instead of free. If the free market was really the way they say, then some security force would come forward and do it for exposure.
You know that it would Cheetah, after he did that commercial, said he was going to write Elon a check for a Tesla. They don't accept checks. Katie, I don't think you can even buy a Tesla with cash.
Write a check for well, rich people are so out of touch with regular, like what things that regular people have to go through.
I'm gonna write a guy who doesn't drive is gonna write a check. He probably, yeah, I bet he has his checkbook though. I'm willing to wager that he carries a checkbook with him. And a special pen too, like a really fancy pen with like narwhal ink or something in it. It's made out of a narwhal tusk.
Oh, I bet I bet he's the type of person who carries the checkbook and then tells people that the signature on the check is going to be more valuable, so they shouldn't cash it.
Oh yeah, that's dastardly.
That's the type of shit. That's some Picasso. That's the type of dick fucking Picasso was too, man. Like going around trying to pay for his shit with sketches that he draws on napkins and shit. Yeah, that's the exact type of asshole the Trump is. Like those are the same types of asshole.
Yeah, don't cash this thing. It'll be worth more. Just wait. I wonder how many people have bought any of the commemorative coins from the current or the 45th administration, thinking that those coins would someday be worth more than the metal they're made out of.
Right, way more than are willing to admit it. They're selling these things. I guess I'm not really hanging out with Trumpers, so I'm not really gonna know for sure if the Trumpers are buying them or not. But I'm assuming. Well, it's like any of the ones that have money left after all the other grifts, like if they didn't get stuck on the meme coins, if they didn't get stuck on the fucking NFTs, They didn't get stuck on the Trump dollars that he promised them they would be able to go use. If they got any money left, it's like, yeah, they're gonna buy the Trump coin too.
I bet these are the same people who are waiting for their Doge checks too, right?
I think, man, it's like I feel like the Democrats really got to start treating these people like bad faith actors and not trying to make it seem like they have any sort of logical or consistent perspectives.
There's no way that being the bigger man is going to deal with this type of political ideology. Being the bigger man is what got them here. Is what landed all of us in this situation.
Obama taking the high road is what got us here. Literally. That we can trace it all back. Because if he had pushed Ruth Bader Ginsburg out and made her fucking retire, and in the process not wasted his goddamn terms trying to get the Affordable Care Act passed and not made it permanent, we wouldn't.
Man,
him being used to like spark the racism would have had something to counter it, but they didn't put. All they did was deport more immigrants and fucking make the police stronger, which was only going to hurt them in the long run.
And if he'd have like gotten convinced Mitt Romney to join his cabinet and spearhead Romney Care as the ACA, which is essentially what it was. Like I'm willing to bet that the Republicans would have been all on board if it had been called Romney Care and not Obama.
Oh yeah, 1,000%. Like, and that's the type of strategizing.
Romney Care was like
that they don't
rock steady or it was the model.
Right. Yeah. It was the one they took from anyway. So.
We could still have had it. They just called it the wrong damn thing. They just had to give it. It's like you can't give it a creditless name. It can't be America's Affordable something or other. It has to be named after somebody. That's how this country works. That's why we can't call it Denali anymore, or Rainier or whatever it was called. McKinley. That's it. Yeah, now it's McKinley again.
Yeah, I mean, everything has become a branding and an identity war. But that's where the right wing made it seem like the left was pushing the war, but the only thing the left or the Democrats were ever really doing was trying to protect certain identities' right to exist within the war. They weren't actually doing anything to ensure that those protections would persist after they weren't in office. And so that's kind of where there's
that's probably why we're getting this horrible, weird, distracting tit for tat crap. That's like, you know, all the things are getting bound up with legal anything, any kind of legal roadblock presented by anyone at this point to try and sideline whatever malarkey is happening. It's really just to make people to draw liberal tears and to make people frustrated. It doesn't even matter. The same way that like a lot of the things that happened over the last several administrations ended up not mattering. They were just like reasons for people to bicker and divide and never talk again.
So it's all of these reasons why it's so important for people not to be miserable and not to make their lives about waiting for Trump to be gone or waiting for Republicans to not be in power, because that's exactly what they want. And what's fucked up about it is they're getting that and they're still not happy. So all of the the people who are putting their agency in the Democratic Party that plays along with the Republican Party and lets the Republicans do this heinous shit every 4 years or whenever they take power, this is where I'm like, the ones who play into the misery and just sit back and watch and encourage other people to be miserable are part of the problem, even though they want to say, I'm Democrat and I vote Democrat. It's like, well, yeah, you vote Democrat, but you make everyone else feel like the Handmaid's Tale when it shouldn't be that way. It's like we are actually closer than ever to a class war than we've ever been in fucking American history. We're very close to the top echelon, the 1% finally getting their safety nets taken out from underneath them. And so on that, it's the best time in history. Trump just happens to be in office. I don't give a fuck who's in office. If we're on the verge of rising up against the fucking elite,
I don't care who is sitting on the throne when the wheel is broken.
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
It don't fucking matter.
So you said something though that made me think for a second, like because I tend to lean more towards dark humor, and I'm kind of cynical about a lot of things, and sometimes when I see things on the news, I'm either cynical about it or my dark humor kicks in. And I know for some people that's not the case. There are a lot of people who are very serious about things, and I know that can be problematic for me because sometimes I'll just see the headline and it'll be amusing and then of course I read the article and like, oh man, I'm a dick for thinking that was funny. Shit. And then I wonder, how did I get to this place where like that's the kind of stuff that my brain does?
But that's also the price of having to navigate this information ocean and constant tsunami wave that is access to the internet. And so I think there are lots of coping mechanisms that come with this type of information filtering that keep people sane, and a lot of that comes in the form of dark humor, but that's not the same as like reading those stories and then forwarding them to someone and being like, look how horrible the world is, and not making a joke about it and just being like, this is terrible. Like, that's what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, no. Like, I always try to either like lead or end with like the punchline at some point. You got to inject that. By the way, guys, this was funny to me because I think we're past the era of comedy where things can be left out in the air or out in the open for people to interpret. It's just too risky.
I feel like comedy's dead, like stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
I feel like Joe Rogan and Dave Chappelle and Andrew Schultz killed stand-up comedy. And like, I'm sure, okay, let me say that this way. I'm sure there are individual people out there who can do a stand-up show and make it funny. But as an art form, I know for a fact that shit has peaked, but it's gotten to a point where most of the big names doing it aren't really jesters in the traditional sense, and they are pundits. So it's become even down to fucking Tim Waltz and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez were doing stand-up tours basically. So there's a very thin line between punditry and stand-up on both sides, to the point that stand-up comedy is no longer really funny in general, and it's just like, I'm gonna spit my fucking political views at you for the next hour, next 90 minutes, and you got to sit there and take it because I got the mic. And it's basically like that on the left and the right, but it's because all of the big comedians do it. So it's almost like a necessary component of stand-up routines now.
Yeah. I don't think Netflix helped either with their barrage of like stand-up or comic specials.
Right? Because then you got what, like Ellen DeGeneres using it as an apology tour, and then not no self-awareness, not realizing like, hey, nobody wants to hear you apologize for being an out-of-touch asshole, like on the stage. That's not the venue where people want to hear you apologize. Like it's not sincere if you're then going to turn around and try to monetize it or turn it into this thing where you're clearly making it an attempt to try to turn the empathy towards you instead of the people you treated like an asshole. So looking at all of the terrible comedy shit that's happened in the past decade, it's like, I know I'm not interested in stand-up comedy, but it's not just me. It's like the Rogan sphere has almost decimated the entire comedy world by proxy of being the biggest force in it, but also being a bunch of unfunny fucking hacks that just grift off of right wingers now.
Oh man, that's just sad.
I mean, do you remember um they're all gonna laugh at you?
Yeah.
What I only asked the question because I wanted to give the slight opportunity that you had never heard of it and be like, maybe he was under a rock for a year. But there was a point where like Adam Sandler, fucking Dennis Miller, like I George Carlin, they were putting out comedy specials that became ubiquitous in culture where everybody listened to They're All Gonna Laugh at You. Like that CD was not political. It was not about dividing
like
people.
Dumb songs that were funny and situations.
But also those situations were meant to be relatable to everyone. It wasn't like, oh, this is only for right wingers.
No.
But then what's the name? Jeff Foxworthy and the You Might Be a Redneck thing, and then the Larry the Cable Guy, they came out and sort of made it like, wanted to make it seem as if redneck humor and humor for hicks was unique and special in a way that was not meant to be racist, but it turned out to fall along super racist lines. And they played into it in a way that they set up the current stage to like to be so divided. Because when you had the kings of comedy, you had the queens of comedy, and then you had the rednecks of comedy or whatever. And it's like, why did segregation hit comedy again? Like, at what point did comedy become segregated? But it's Jeff Foxworthy. It's 1,000%. You can point at Jeff Foxworthy and be like, he resegregated comedy almost single-handedly.
Yeah, even Def Jam was like diversified.
Fucking Gary Owen, yeah.
Like that was the only place where you would see some Asian dude, it followed up by a Latina woman, and then some real thin white guy, and then a big fat white guy, and then like, and they were all talking mad shit the whole time. It was awesome. Actually, no, some of them weren't, but
it's funny that there's certain white people who gained popularity working in black venues or black media, and then they like went mainstream to the white audience. But then you see some of them like never lose their touch or connection. Like Channing Tatum, he's never going to turn his back on black people. Like Tim Roth, he's never going to turn his back on black people. Fucking Gary Owen, never. So there's certain people. Eminem would never turn his back on black people.
Channing Tatum is going to be sharing like low lit butt pics of himself until he can't get his hands around like the camera and point at himself.
But that's in comparison to people like Post Malone, who as soon as he got a little bit of clout, it's like, man, he ditched hip hop so fast. You would think he was never into hip hop based on how fast he fucking dropped that shit.
Yeah, but pop music is weird like that. Pop music isn't beholden to anything. It just likes to put on costumes.
Right, but I mean, Lil Wayne made pop music in Europe while he was doing shit in America that Americans never heard. Like I would hear Lil Wayne pop tracks with like Katy Perry or some shit while I was in Istanbul, but that shit like never played in America. And it's like there's Americans that go make pop music in Europe that never remotely makes it to these shores, but they don't abandon their own genre to do that. Whereas Post Malone just straight up abandoned his fucking the genre that made him famous.
But I think the difference is Lil Wayne's costume is the pop music outfit.
For sure. I mean,
whereas Post Malone makes pop music, and so he just puts on whatever idiosyncratic or stylistic sounds that he wants to work with and write some lyrics. And I'm not saying that I'm like done deep analysis of Post Malone's music, but what I've heard, it's very formulaic.
Oh yeah.
And so, it falls right into the pop paradigm every time.
Yeah.
His country music, he has some decent musicians on the recording, but that stuff doesn't have the same kind of, let's see, what's the way to describe it? It doesn't have the same kind of movement that I hear in country music because it wasn't written by a team of songwriters in Nashville. It was written by a dude who likes country music. And that's not to say there's anything wrong with outsider art. Outsider art's actually some of my, that I really enjoy outsider art because it takes a lot of courage for people to make something that is like, foreign, that they've only been able to look on from afar. Very challenging. But at the same time, pop music is extremely formulaic and it allows for a lot of costume changes. So
well, and in that regard, I wonder how long pop music is going to persist. I don't know. After a while, it became house music.
Yeah.
It became synonymous with house music. So I don't know how long pop music as a catch-all genre is going to exist without actually just becoming straight on house music.
I think pop music just absorbs whatever the current youth generation is listening to.
For sure. But I mean, in that it's like it's gone through all the phases to the point where like mainstream pop is like it's house music that has a trap breakdown that goes back to house music. That's pop now.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. And it's like that's you're right. The same thing happened with garage like 20 years ago. Or that like summer when garage was the sound of all pop radio. That was actually a good summer. It was like a Jordan Knight song. I remember that.
And John B.
Yeah.
That Jordan Knight song was dope. I was bumping the shit out of that.
Yeah.
Give It to You.
Yeah, Give It to You. That's a really good song. That I think
15-inch subwoofers in the car. Yeah. This shit bang.
Yeah. Man, I feel like that might have been peak pop dance music. Because that stuff that stuff had like just infectious grooves, and
I think that was totally peak music industry.
Yeah.
Is what it was. Like that was really peak music industry in that the New Kids on the Block were musicians. Jordan Knight in that moment was doing modern music at the time that was the most produced, the most catch-all. So it was the embodiment of everything before and in the moment.
26 years ago. That was released in 1999. Okay, yeah.
And it still holds up. That song really is great to this day. But the whole reason is because that's when music industry peaked. And so I would like issue being that New Kids on the Block persist to this day because they were still allowed to become bigger than their label.
Yeah.
Backstreet Boys were able to become bigger. Like they were allowed. Other people they started to pare them down to the point. O-Town 96 and 98 degrees?
90 something degrees.
Yeah, 90 something degrees. There were multiple fucking boy bands that were like potentially gonna be as hot.
They could all sing. They could all harmonize.
Right. They could all dance.
They could all dance.
There's literally nothing that separated them except for the fact that they just didn't get that push over the top. And so seeing that happen, but also seeing the quality of the music homogenized is what it comes down to. Is
I wonder how strong the correlation between being a part of the Mickey Mouse Club and being a 90s pop superstar. Like when, because I'm pretty sure that had a really big impact.
I mean, Jake Paul wasn't part of the Mickey Mouse Club, but he was in the Mickey Mouse channel, in the Mickey Mouse Network. So
that's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. You see, there's still a pipeline if they want it to happen. They can do it. Miley Cyrus was in that pipeline.
Yeah. She's also like country music royalty to begin with.
What's her name? Allison. There was some chick that like flipped out and Amanda Bynes.
Oh,
yeah.
Amanda Bynes.
She was like in that pipeline and was destined for like adult fame, but she was like, I don't like the way that the girls in this pipeline become sexualized so early, and then when they turn 18, it's like they go into this like other pipeline altogether, which is basically, we saw it with Christina and Britney, where it was like the Christina clearly they were trying to take her into that pipeline faster, but Britney ended up in the same pipeline too eventually. But it's like they didn't put enough protections in that pipeline to make it so that the girls that became women in it were protected from their audience. And Amanda Bynes was like one of the first to step out of it and be like, I don't want any of this fucking as an adult.
Whoa, she got a face tattoo.
Yeah, bro. I don't know if you realize like how hardcore she is, like all the way out of show business. She like went hard. That's the only reason I even know who she is because she went on this binge of like anti-show business antics, and people were like, she's going crazy. But it's like, no, this was like before Me Too as well. It was like right around the beginning of Me Too. So people were starting to take shit seriously, but not really aware of the scale of the shit that was happening. And so they were basically like, Amanda Bynes is losing her mind. But really, she's just like becoming an adult in a fucking terrible environment.
Oh, it looks like she got it removed in 2022.
But we wouldn't know because she's not in the public eye anymore. So
yeah,
and that's good for her.
She doesn't look like with her current look. She doesn't look anything like she did when she was, in front of cameras all the time. Like, looks like a completely different person. That just goes to show like how much makeup, smoke and mirrors, and perfect lighting can really change the way someone looks.
Well, on that note, I don't know if you remember the billing for wrestling in like, if the WWE or WWF show was happening, they would say like, oh, coming to the ring is Hulk Hogan, 6'7", The Rock, 6'5". Well, in a lot of these cases, the heights and the weights were exaggerated by at least 3 inches, and it fucked with a lot of people to the point where I learned only recently that one of my friends in high school would like tell people that he was 5'11", knowing damn well he was 6'2", and it was like fucking with all their perceptions of themselves.
Oh, I love that.
Like, it was this is
I love that.
I thought this shit was hilarious because it was like he was on the basketball team, and so it was like fucking with all the other guys, and they would start lying about their heights, and they would be like, "Oh, I'm 6 feet tall," knowing damn well they're like 5'9", and so finding out that like him as a tall person was like telling other people he's 5'11", like it made me so happy in that my entire life, I've never really worried about height, and like, I've never really thought about it. And it dawned on me, like at some point, the Pacers used to practice at our high school. And at one point I stood next to Rick Smits, and I had to like crane my neck up.
Cause he's an actual real tall dude.
Yeah, he's like 7'1". Maybe he might have shrunk by now, but he was 7'1", and I'm 13 years old, and I'm like, this is the tallest fucking human being I've ever seen in my life. And probably since then, he's probably the tallest human being I've ever seen in real life.
7'4".
Oh my God, no wonder. No wonder. No fucking wonder. So it's one of those things where it was like, I know damn well at that point, I'm never going to be that tall. So it's like, you just put it out of your mind. Like, oh, you've met the tallest person you're ever going to meet. Like nobody, you're not going to be taller than that. So like, I'm not worried about being tall because I've met the tallest person.
I think I was like 22 or 23. And that's like the last time a doctor had, they take your measurements and stuff like that. And that was the last time that I remember them saying my height, because after that it was always the same. And so I'm 5'8.5". Maybe 5'8 3/4" if I sleep really well and my back stretches out. And I remember I would tell people that I'm like, yeah, I'm only 5'8.5". Like, no, you're not. You're taller than that. It's like, okay, well, that makes you feel better.
And yes. What's funny is like, as a person who's telling people your regular height, all these other dudes have been lying about their heights their whole lives. So other people are like, whoa, you're 5. I thought this other dude was 6 feet tall, so you're taller than him. And it's seeing like this one dude, Wes Watson, who's obsessed with being 6 feet tall, and is like, he got arrested and they put 5'8" on his fucking on his form, and he can't stop talking about how he's 6 feet tall or he's 6'2" or whatever, and like he keeps making a big deal about it, and I'm like, I can't imagine being that obsessed with like how tall I am, knowing it's something you can't change, but there's always somebody taller. So it's like, who cares if you're 6 feet? Somebody's 6'2", somebody's 6'6", somebody's 7 feet tall. Like, who cares, man? But there's so many dudes out there that I guess they never get to stand next to a truly tall person and like have that realization of like, holy shit, this is tall. 6 feet it's tall if you're comparing it to like a 5 foot person. 7'4" is fucking tall. That's tall.
I mean, literally
Like,
every bank, every gas station, every convenience store, almost every supermarket that I've ever been in, Walmart, um, Sam's Club, they all have those stickers on the exits that indicate height.
yeah, yeah.
There's actually a really good. I saw this really good Instagram reel, and it was like this guy was showing up to these ladies' apartment, and one of them says like, "You said he's 6 feet, right?" And she's like, "Yeah, he said he's 6 feet." And the guy walks in, and he's like 5.5 feet tall. And it's like it's just one of those things. People lie. What can you do about it? I'm actually worried that there's a generation of people out there who, you know, think, 6 inches is a lot smaller than it actually is.
Well, and it's like somebody who's 5'6" is closer to being 6 feet than they are to being 4 feet. So
Yeah.
people gotta get over being short kings, man.
Can you imagine like how much more people who are super tall have to spend on shoes?